A flawless crystal skull stares back from the darkness. It looks ancient, mystical, and impossibly perfect. These objects are linked to prophecies of world salvation and star in major Hollywood adventures. Yet their true story is a deeper, more fascinating puzzle. By the end of this journey, you will understand the real battle between irresistible legend and undeniable science that defines these artifacts. We will uncover who really carved them and why their origins have been hotly debated for over a century. What does our centuries-long obsession with these crystal heads reveal about our own desires? The most powerful story attached to these objects is not about their creation but their purpose. A compelling modern legend claims they are far more than mere carvings. According to this tale, there are not one, but 13 ancient crystal skulls scattered across the globe. They were left behind by an advanced civilization, perhaps the Maya or the Aztecs, or even visitors from beyond our world. Each skull is said to contain a fragment of profound knowledge, a piece of a cosmic puzzle, and the prophecy states that when humanity is on the brink of its greatest crisis, all 13 skulls must be found and brought together. Only then will their combined power activate, unlocking their secrets and granting the wisdom needed to avert disaster and guide us into a new age of enlightenment. It is a narrative of hidden hope, a secret backup plan for civilization encoded in crystal. This idea, blending ancient mysticism with a thrilling scavenger hunt, proved utterly irresistible. It gave the skulls a mission and a mystique far beyond any museum artifact. But how did this specific legend reach the ears of millions? Its path to fame was paved by Hollywood. The crystal skulls achieved true pop culture immortality with the release of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in 2008. Here, they were central to a plot involving interdimensional beings, lost cities, and psychic powers. The film presented them not as curiosities, but as keys to unimaginable power, solidifying their image as the ultimate mystical MacGuffin. This was not their first silver screen appearance, but it was their biggest, transforming them from obscure collector's items into household symbols of ancient mystery. Television shows, books, and documentaries eagerly amplified this aura, often presenting the prophecy as a genuine historical possibility. The public imagination was captured. The skulls were no longer just objects, they were characters in a global drama waiting for their moment to save us all. This widespread fame, however, created a fascinating problem. It built a magnificent stage, but it was a stage made of myth. And onto this stage walked the real skulls, burdened with a legend they never knew. To understand the true enigma, we must now step away from the silver screen and into the much quieter and far more puzzling rooms where these artifacts first appeared. The real world, however, offered no lost cities or psychic archaeologists. Instead, the mystery began in far more ordinary places, with two particular skulls that became the standard bearers for the entire enigma. The first is housed in the British Museum in London. It was acquired in 1897, purchased from the famous Tiffany and Company in New York, who themselves bought it from a French antiquity dealer. The dealer claimed it was a genuine Aztec relic. The skull is life-sized, carved from a single block of clear quartz, and possesses a haunting, almost translucent quality. Its craftsmanship is striking, with smooth, rounded features and a detached jaw. For decades, it sat in a display case, labeled as a masterpiece of pre-Columbian art, a silent and solemn artifact from a lost world. The second major player arrived much later, adding a modern twist to the tale. In 1992, the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. received a heavy, anonymous parcel. Inside was another life-sized quartz crystal skull, along with a note stating it had been purchased in Mexico in 1960. This skull, now known as the Smithsonian specimen, was even more dramatic in appearance. It is larger and heavier than the British Museum skull, with more pronounced features and a deeply hollowed-out eye area that gives it an intensely skeletal look. Both objects are imposing, beautiful, and undeniably eerie, but from the moment they entered these esteemed institutions, their paperwork told a story far shakier than their crystal forms. Their provenances, the records of their ownership and origin, were not just vague, they were practically non-existent. The trail consistently went cold with phrases like acquired from a Mexican antiquity dealer or said to be from an ancient site. There were no excavation records, no credible eyewitnesses to their discovery, no concrete links to any known archaeological dig. This lack of a solid history was the very fuel that fed the mystery from the very beginning. If these were not modern creations, then where did they come from, and who could have made them with such skill? The silence in their documentation spoke volumes, inviting speculation to rush in and fill the void. Yet among all the crystal skulls, one name stands above the rest, shrouded in a personal drama as intricate as its carvings. The Mitchell-Hedges skull is often called the most perfect, and its story is the most hotly disputed. Its tale begins not in a museum ledger, but with a teenage girl on a jungle adventure. In the 1920s, the explorer F.A. Mitchell-Hedges was excavating the ancient Maya city of Lubuntan in what is now Belize. According to the story popularized later, his adopted daughter Anna, then just 17, was exploring the ruins on her birthday when a flash of sunlight caught her eye. There, beneath a collapsed altar, she saw the flawless quartz skull staring back at her. The jawpiece was found separately 3 months later, making the discovery complete. This narrative is pure cinematic gold, a personal moment of wonder linking a modern individual directly to an ancient secret. The skull itself is a technical marvel. Unlike the others, its jaw is not merely separate but perfectly hinged, moving as if it were a real bone. The quartz is of breathtaking clarity, and the craftsmanship is so refined that experts have long argued such precision carving without modern tools should be impossible for any known ancient Mesoamerican culture. It feels less like an artifact and more like a singular, impossible masterpiece. But the cracks in this perfect story appeared almost immediately. Serious archaeologists who were at Lubuntan never recorded such a find. No photographs from the dig show the skull. Most damningly, researchers uncovered a paper trail suggesting a very different origin. Years before Anna's claimed discovery, a very similar crystal skull appeared in the records of a London art dealer, and it was even listed for sale at a Sotheby's auction in 1943. The buyer was none other than F.A. Mitchell-Hedges himself. This evidence paints a far less romantic picture, one of a skull purchased on the antiquities market, with a thrilling jungle discovery story woven around it later to increase its value and mystique. Anna Mitchell-Hedges defended her story fiercely for the rest of her life, but the controversy never faded. This single object, therefore, embodies the entire core conflict of the crystal skull mystery. Is it the ultimate proof of lost ancient technology, a sacred object waiting for its prophecy, or is it a magnificent 20th century confection, a legend crafted not in stone but in story? The answer lies not in the jungle but in the crystal itself. The truth, it turns out, was not hidden in old journals or jungle ruins, but locked within the molecular structure of the skulls themselves. To unravel the mystery, scientists turn to the very substance of the artifact's quartz crystal. This common mineral, formed deep within the earth under immense heat and pressure, holds a hidden diary. Each deposit of quartz has a unique chemical fingerprint, tiny traces of other elements and water molecules trapped during its formation. By analyzing these microscopic impurities, geologists can often pinpoint the specific region, even the specific mine where a crystal originally came from. It is a geological detective story written in atoms. When researchers subjected the famous skulls to this analysis, the results were startling. The quartz in the British Museum skull was traced not to Mexico or Central America, but to sources far more likely to be in Brazil or Madagascar. These are regions with no known historical connection to pre-Columbian crystal carving. The Mitchell-Hedges skull presented an even more puzzling signature, one that did not neatly match any major known quartz deposit, adding another layer of strangeness to its already controversial story. This was the first major crack in the ancient narrative, a whisper from the crystal itself that it had traveled a very different path than the legends claimed. But the most damning evidence came not from where the crystal was from, but from how it was shaped. Quartz is not like wood or soft stone. It has a hidden internal architecture, a crystal lattice with specific planes of weakness called cleavage planes. To carve it without it exploding into pieces, a craftsman must have an intuitive or learned understanding of these crystallographic axes. They must align every strike, every grinding motion, precisely with this natural grain. Ancient lapidaries in Mesoamerica, who created beautiful beads and small figurines from quartz, absolutely possessed this profound knowledge. Their work respected the crystal's soul. Modern analysis, however, revealed something deeply inconsistent. When scientists examined the surfaces of the British Museum and Smithsonian skulls under high-powered microscopes, they found telltale marks of a completely different technology. The smooth curves and deep hollows showed the uniform, circular scratches of rotary wheels and abrasive drills, tools powered by electricity or advanced machinery that simply did not exist in the Americas before European contact. The carving ignored the natural crystal axes, brute forcing the shape with modern industrial methods. This was not the work of a patient artisan reading the stone, it was the signature of a 20th century workshop. The crystal was ancient, but the cuts upon it were decidedly modern. The evidence from those microscopic scratches is undeniable. It points to a workshop, not a temple. But to truly appreciate what this means, we need to understand the stark contrast in craftsmanship. Imagine the ancient Mesoamerican artisan. Their toolkit was one of profound patience and intimate material knowledge. To shape something as hard as quartz, they would have used a simple bow drill, its tip made of wood or bone, and an abrasive slurry of fine sand or crushed quartz mixed with water. The process was achingly slow. The craftsman would guide the drill by hand, the bow spinning it back and forth, the gritty paste slowly, grain by grain, wearing away the crystal. This method, repeated over hundreds of hours, creates a surface with fine, random, multidirectional scratches. The final polish would come from hand rubbing with ever finer abrasives, perhaps plant fibers or leather, resulting in a soft, almost waxy luster that follows the natural contours of the object. There is a human rhythm to this work, a conversation between the artist and the stone. Now, place that image beside the modern alternative. The rotary tools that left their signature on the museum skulls are a product of the industrial age. A high-speed electric or pedal-powered lathe spins a metal or diamond-impregnated wheel at a constant, rapid pace. When this wheel meets the crystal, it cuts with mechanical efficiency, leaving behind a perfectly uniform pattern of microscopic, concentric circles, like the grooves on a vinyl record. These are marks of speed and power, not patience. They are the fingerprint of 20th century technology. For many experts, this forensic detail is the case-closed moment. The presence of these rotary marks on an object claimed to be 1,000 years old is as anachronistic as finding a microchip in a medieval manuscript. It suggests a creator who valued the final, dramatic form over the historically accurate process, someone working to satisfy a collector's idea of the ancient and mystical, rather than following the true, painstaking methods of the past. This scientific verdict, however, did not silence the mystery. Instead, it deepened the most compelling question of all. If these famous skulls are modern creations, then who made them, and more importantly, why did they go to such extraordinary lengths? The scientific verdict was clear, but museums required proof beyond a shadow of a doubt. To settle the debate once and for all, the British Museum undertook a meticulous forensic examination of its own crystal skull in the 1990s and again in the 2000s. They subjected the artifact to the most advanced analytical tools available, treating it not as a mystical object but as a physical piece of evidence. The key instrument in this investigation was the scanning electron microscope, a device that can magnify a surface thousands of times, revealing a world invisible to the naked eye. Under this powerful lens, the smooth, polished cheek of the skull told a very different story. Researchers saw not the random, multidirectional scratches of hand sanding, but a series of perfectly parallel, perfectly straight lines. These were the unmistakable fingerprints of a modern, mechanically powered lapidary wheel. Such a tool, with its constant, high-speed rotation, leaves a uniform pattern that no hand-powered method from any ancient culture could ever produce. It was like finding tire tracks at the scene of a supposed horse and carriage accident. The analysis went deeper, examining the very polish on the crystal surface. Experts identified traces of abrasive compounds like silicon carbide, a synthetic material invented in the late 19th century. This modern abrasive was embedded in the microscopic grooves, a silent witness to the tools used in the skull's creation. After compiling all this evidence, the museum's conclusion was definitive and left no room for ancient mystery. They stated publicly that their iconic crystal skull was not an Aztec or Maya relic. It was a creation of the 19th century, almost certainly carved in Europe, likely in Germany, where there was a thriving industry producing exotic curiosities for the growing antiquities market. This was not a verdict based on speculation, but on the immutable laws of physics and material science written in the crystal itself. The object in the glass case was a beautiful, skillful, and utterly fascinating fake. The British Museum's findings sent a shockwave through the world of archaeology, but the story was far from over. Across the Atlantic, the Smithsonian Institution faced its own enigmatic crystal skull, the one that had arrived anonymously in a plain brown box. For years, it sat in storage, a beautiful but problematic object with no clear past. Faced with the growing public fascination and the scientific questions raised by their counterparts in London, the Smithsonian decided it was time to conduct an investigation of their own, one that would leave no stone, or rather no crystal, unturned. Their approach was a masterclass in modern forensic archaeology, deploying a suite of technologies that would have seemed like pure science fiction to the skull's purported creators. First, they bathed the artifact in ultraviolet light. Under this invisible spectrum, certain types of tool marks and residues fluoresce, revealing secrets hidden in plain sight. The skull's surface lit up with patterns that were far too regular, too mechanically perfect to be the work of ancient hand tools. Next came the computerized tomography scan, a CT scan. This technology, commonly used in medicine to see inside the human body, allowed researchers to peer deep into the heart of the quartz itself. They were looking for internal stress fractures, bubbles, or inclusions that might tell a geological story, but more importantly, they could map the precise contours of the carving from the inside out. The scan revealed something telling. The deep, hollowed-out eye sockets and the intricate detailing inside the skull had been achieved with a speed and uniformity that spoke of powered rotary tools, not the slow, careful work of a bow drill and sand. Finally, a meticulous tool mark analysis was conducted, comparing the microscopic signatures on the Smithsonian skull to those on definitively ancient Mesoamerican quartz objects. The contrast could not have been starker. The ancient pieces showed the chaotic, crisscrossing scratches of human hands. The Smithsonian skull displayed the smooth, parallel grooves of a high-speed wheel. The conclusion, published by the Smithsonian's own researchers, was as definitive as it was surprising. They announced that their crystal skull was not an ancient artifact. It was a modern creation, carved sometime in the late 19th or early 20th century, using equipment readily available to a skilled European or American jeweler of that era. This was a monumental admission. Here was one of the world's most respected scientific and cultural institutions publicly debunking an object in its own collection, stripping away decades of speculative mystery with cold, hard data. The significance of this move cannot be overstated. It was not just about one fake skull, it was about the integrity of history itself. By openly declaring the object's true origins, the Smithsonian reaffirmed a crucial principle that our understanding of the past must be built on evidence, not on the allure of a good story. Their investigation transformed the skull from a mysterious relic into a different kind of historical document, one that tells us less about ancient civilizations and more about the modern world's enduring appetite for the mystical and the unexplained. But what of the Mitchell-Hedges skull, the one with the perfect hinged jaw and the birthday discovery story? If the museum skulls were modern, surely this most famous and perfect of them all would be the ultimate test case. It too was finally subjected to the cold, hard gaze of science, and the results were far more ambiguous, fueling the debate rather than ending it. In the 1970s, the skull was examined by researchers at the Hewlett-Packard Crystal Laboratories, experts in quartz for use in electronics and timekeeping. Their analysis was not focused on archaeology, but on the material itself. They were reportedly astonished. They confirmed it was carved from a single, flawless block of quartz crystal, a type that exhibits both piezoelectric and pyroelectric properties, meaning it can generate an electric charge under pressure or heat. More strikingly, they noted the carving appeared to have been done in total disregard for the natural crystal axis. Quartz has a grain like wood, and carving against it dramatically increases the risk of shattering the entire block. To do so successfully, the Hewlett-Packard researchers concluded, would have required a staggering level of skill and patience, perhaps years of meticulous work using hand abrasives. They could not date the object, but their awe at its technical achievement became a cornerstone for those arguing for its ancient, otherworldly origins. How could a modern forger, they asked, possess such reckless dedication or such profound understanding of the crystal's structure? Yet later examinations introduced serious doubts. Independent researchers who studied the skull, particularly the detachable jaw, reported seeing faint but telltale signs of modern tooling. Under magnification, they identified microscopic parallel striations and patterns of wear consistent with the use of high-speed, hard metal tools, not the softer, hand-powered abrasives of antiquity. The most damning evidence for some was not on the skull itself, but around it. The complete absence of any documented evidence from the Loubontin excavation, coupled with the paper trail linking a nearly identical skull to a London art sale years before Anna's claimed discovery, painted a picture of a 20th century provenance, not a pre-Columbian one. The pro-authenticity arguments, however, remain passionate. Proponents point back to the sheer technical insanity of carving against the crystal axis as proof it cannot be modern, for no rational artisan would choose the most difficult path possible. They suggest ancient craftsmen, perhaps with lost knowledge or even technologies we do not understand, might have used methods that leave no recognizable tool marks. For them, the Mitchell-Hedges skull remains the great outlier, the one artifact that science cannot fully explain away, the beautiful enigma that keeps the door to ancient mystery tantalizingly open. This leaves us at an impasse, a battle between a romantic, personal narrative and a forensic, scientific one, with a breathtaking crystal object sitting silently at the center. While the Mitchell-Hedges skull remains a stubborn puzzle, the trail for many others leads not to a Central American jungle, but to a picturesque river valley in Europe. For over a century, the small German town of Idar-Oberstein has been the global epicenter for carving quartz crystal. Nestled in a region rich with agate and amethyst deposits, its workshops perfected the art of transforming raw stone into breathtaking objects. By the late 19th century, these master carvers were not just making jewelry and decorative items, they were feeding a voracious market for the exotic. Wealthy European and American collectors, captivated by the romantic discoveries of lost civilizations in Egypt and the Americas, craved authentic-looking antiquities for their cabinets of curiosities. If a collector wanted a stunning Mayan-style vase or an Aztec-inspired sacrificial knife made from precious stone, there was one place on Earth most likely to produce it: Idar Oberstein. The artisans there were technical geniuses. Using the newly available power from water wheels and later electricity, they operated advanced rotary tools with diamond-tipped bits that could cut and polish the world's hardest minerals with a precision ancient cultures could never achieve. More importantly, they were masterful copyists. They studied published illustrations of genuine pre-Columbian artifacts in books and museum catalogs, then used their unparalleled skills to recreate them, often blending styles or inventing entirely new ancient forms to suit a buyer's fancy. This is where the evidence points for skulls like the one in the British Museum. The quartz type matches material available through European trade networks, not Mesoamerican ones. The microscopic tool marks are textbook examples of late 19th century German lapidary work, and the very concept of a life-sized, hyper-realistic crystal skull, while echoing some small Mesoamerican stone carvings of deities, is an artistic amplification, a dramatic piece designed to awe a modern collector, not to serve an ancient ritual. These German workshops were not producing crude forgeries, they were creating objects of genuine beauty and technical marvel, sold as in the style of, or sometimes with a wink and a nod, as mysterious discoveries from afar. In this light, the British Museum skull transforms from a baffling archaeological anomaly into a stunning example of 19th century European craftsmanship, a testament to both human skill and our timeless desire to possess a piece of the mysterious past, even if we have to manufacture it ourselves. This demand for the ancient and exotic created a perfect storm for enterprising dealers. In Mexico City, following the chaos of independence and foreign interventions, a new kind of economy emerged around the nation's past. Local vendors, seeing the stream of European and American travelers, began selling authentic relics dug from the fields or discovered in remote villages. Often these were genuine fragments, but just as often they were skillful copies made in backstreet workshops specifically to meet the tourist trade. A ceramic pot could be aged with dirt and acid. A jade figurine could be carved in a style that felt convincingly old. The crystal skulls, with their dramatic appearance and spiritual resonance, were the ultimate high-value items in this grey market. A dealer could acquire one from a source, perhaps even from a European carver, and weave a tale of its discovery in a forgotten tomb or a sacred cenote. For a wealthy collector on a grand tour, purchasing such an object was not just acquiring art, it was buying a piece of a thrilling, romantic narrative to take home. The story became part of the artifact's value, a provenance written in whispers rather than on paper. This system fed directly into the collections of major museums. Curators and agents, eager to build their institutions' holdings of non-Western art, often had to rely on these same dealers. With limited ability to verify excavation details in a foreign country, they trusted the dealer's word and judged the object on its aesthetic merit. A stunning, perfectly carved crystal skull was simply too magnificent to question too deeply. It looked the part, it felt ancient, and it filled a display case with awe. In this climate, truth became a secondary concern to beauty and the compelling idea of the artifact. The skulls were not born from malice, but from a confluence of desire, commerce, and a 19th century hunger to possess the mysteries of a world that was rapidly being mapped and explained. They are, in a very real sense, relics of that era's imagination. The true test of any artifact's history is not in its crystal, but in its paperwork. Every object that enters a major museum carries with it a story on paper, a chain of ownership called its provenance. This is the biography of an artifact, listing every hand it passed through, from the moment it left the ground to the moment it entered a display case. For an object claiming to be ancient, this paper trail should be robust, detailed, and verifiable. For the crystal skulls, it is anything but. Their provenances are not just thin, they are often fictional, a series of elegant whispers that dissolve under the slightest scrutiny. Take the British Museum skull as a prime example. For decades, its label told a simple, glamorous story. It was an Aztec relic acquired by the museum in 1897 from the prestigious New York jewelers Tiffany & Company. That single fact lent it an air of legitimacy, as if the approval of a famous luxury house could vouch for its ancient origins. But where did Tiffany get it? The trail leads back to a French antiquity dealer named Eugene Bobin. Bobin was a fascinating character, a man who built a career supplying Mexican artifacts to European museums and collectors in the late 19th century. He sold the skull to Tiffany, claiming it was Aztec. Yet when researchers began to dig into Bobin's own records, the story grew murky. It appears that at one point, Bobin may have even tried to sell the same skull to Mexico's National Museum, where experts rejected it as a modern piece. The paper trail, rather than solidifying the skull's history, revealed it to be an object with a contested and commercially motivated past from the very beginning. The link to the Aztecs was not based on any excavation record, but on the word of a dealer whose business depended on the allure of the exotic. This pattern repeats with nearly every major skull. The Smithsonian's anonymous donation came with a note claiming it was bought in Mexico in 1960, but no seller was named, no receipt provided. The Mitchell-Hedges skull's entire jungle discovery narrative exists in a vacuum of contemporary documentation, contradicted by that earlier auction record. These are not minor gaps, they are cavernous holes. In the world of archaeology and museum curation, a missing or fabricated provenance is the biggest red flag imaginable. It is the equivalent of a priceless painting with no record of where it was painted, who owned it, or how it changed hands for centuries. Without that chain of custody, an object's story belongs to whoever tells the most compelling tale. The crystal skulls, therefore, floated into our museums and our imaginations not on a raft of evidence, but on a cloud of persuasive storytelling, a cloud that science and historical detective work would eventually begin to dispel. Yet the science did not end the story, it merely shifted its stage. As museums quietly moved their skulls from the archaeology wing to exhibits on fakes and forgeries, a powerful new force was embracing them, a force less concerned with carbon dating and more with cosmic vibrations. The 1960s and 70s ushered in a cultural revolution that prized spiritual experience over institutional authority. The New Age movement, with its focus on alternative healing, psychic phenomena, and a return to ancient wisdom, found in the crystal skulls a perfect physical talisman. Here were objects of stunning beauty, seemingly ancient and made of quartz, a mineral already revered in metaphysical circles for its purported ability to store and amplify energy. The skulls were quickly reinterpreted not as archaeological puzzles, but as spiritual batteries and psychic antennas. Practitioners began to claim they could feel a palpable energy field emanating from the crystal, a humming vibration or a warmth when they held their hands near it. They were used in meditation sessions, placed at the center of healing circles, and treated not as inert artifacts but as conscious beings. The most dramatic claims involved psychic channeling. Individuals would sit with a skull, often in a darkened room, and enter a trance state, purportedly receiving messages from the object itself. These messages were rarely about historical facts. Instead, they spoke of lost civilizations like Atlantis or Lemuria, of warnings for humanity's future, and of the skull's role in a coming planetary awakening. The Mitchell-Hedges skull, in particular, became a star of this circuit, with its guardian Anna participating in sessions where the skull was said to communicate its name, its purpose, and its loneliness at being separated from its fellows. This spiritual narrative created something far more resilient than a museum label. It created a community. For those who had profound personal experiences during a skull meditation or who felt healed by its presence, the scientific reports about rotary tool marks were irrelevant abstractions. Their truth was emotional, experiential, and transcendent. The skulls became sacred objects in a modern pantheon. Their value derived from the meaning and connection they provided to believers, a meaning utterly separate from and often defiant of archaeological proof. In this realm, the mystery did not need to be solved, it needed to be felt. But for the very peoples whose ancestors are said to have carved these objects, the debate takes on a profoundly different tone. Modern Maya and other indigenous communities of Mesoamerica often view the crystal skulls through a lens of painful history, not mystical intrigue. To many, these artifacts, whether ancient fakes or not, represent something deeply familiar, the extraction and commodification of their cultural heritage. For centuries, sacred objects, human remains, and priceless artworks were taken from their lands by explorers, collectors, and institutions, often without consent and almost always without context. The crystal skulls circulating in distant museums and private collections fit neatly into this long pattern of cultural theft. Their value, in this view, is not measured by their quartz clarity or their tool marks, but by the fact that they are yet another piece of a stolen spiritual identity, sitting behind glass far from the people they are claimed to represent. This perspective shifts the entire conversation from a mystery of origins to a question of ethics. Who has the right to own, display, and define the meaning of such an object? For indigenous activists and scholars, the answer is clear: the descendants of the cultures being referenced. This has led to powerful efforts at reclamation. While crystal skulls specifically may not be the focus of major repatriation claims due to their dubious origins, they are part of a larger, vital movement. Communities are increasingly demanding the return of unequivocally authentic sacred artifacts and ancestral remains from museums worldwide. The principle is the same: cultural objects are not mere curiosities. They are living entities with spiritual significance that belong within the community that understands their true purpose. In some cases, indigenous leaders have been invited to museums not to reclaim a skull, but to reconnect with it. There are documented instances where Maya spiritual guides have performed blessing ceremonies in front of crystal skulls in museum cases, using the moment to cleanse the object of its long exile and reconnect it, however symbolically, to its cultural roots. These acts are not an authentication of the artifact's age. They are a reassertion of cultural authority over its narrative. They transform the skull from a passive specimen of debate into an active participant in healing a historical wound. This layer adds the most crucial and human dimension to the entire enigma. Beyond the labs and the legend mills, the story of the crystal skulls is also a story about power, about who gets to tell the story of the past and who has been silenced. It asks us to consider not only what these objects are, but what they have come to symbolize in a world still grappling with the legacy of colonialism. The mystery, therefore, is no longer just about their creation, but about their future and who will ultimately decide what they mean. Amidst all the scientific skepticism and historical doubt, a stubborn question refuses to fade. Could any of them, even one, be genuinely ancient? This is not the fringe belief of a Hollywood script, but a serious argument posed by some archaeologists and historians who look at the skulls and see not a modern fake, but a staggering technological achievement of the pre-Columbian world. Their case begins with an undeniable fact: Mesoamerican cultures held crystal in the highest esteem and mastered its manipulation. The Aztecs, the Maya, and others did not just carve crystal, they revered it. They saw clear quartz as frozen water, the very essence of life and a conduit to the divine. They carved it into exquisite jewelry, intricate beads, and small, powerful figurines meant for royalty and ritual. We have the proof. In the Musée du Quai Branly in Paris, there is a small Aztec crystal skull, no larger than a golf ball. It is unquestionably authentic, dated to around the 15th century. This tiny masterpiece, with its simplified features, was likely part of a ceremonial scepter or a necklace for a high priest. It demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of lapidary arts, a culture that possessed the raw skill, the spiritual motivation, and the deep material knowledge to work this challenging stone. So, the leap from a small figurine to a life-sized skull is not a leap from 0 to 100, but from a proven 10 to a hypothetical 100. The argument for authenticity hinges on that possibility. Proponents ask us to consider the sheer scale of time and devotion in the ancient world. What seems impossibly difficult to our modern, efficiency-obsessed minds might have been a sacred, generation-spanning project for them. Imagine a master carver, perhaps the most skilled in a city-state, being given a single, perfect block of crystal by a king or high priest. Their task is not bound by quarterly deadlines or profit margins. It is a spiritual commission, using only hand-powered bow drills, abrasive sand, and strips of leather or reed for polishing. They could theoretically begin. The process would be agonizingly slow, removing mere dust particles with each pass. It might take not months but years, perhaps even decades. The carver would need an intuitive, almost supernatural feel for the crystal's internal structure to avoid shattering it. They would work with the grain when possible, and against it with breathtaking caution when the artistic vision demanded it. This scenario does not require lost lasers or alien intervention. It requires a level of patience and culturally embedded purpose that our modern world has largely forgotten. The resulting object would be more than art. It would be a testament, a physical embodiment of a civilization's devotion, skill, and connection to the spiritual realm. This is the core what if that keeps the mystery alive. It is the idea that we may be judging ancient achievements by modern sensibilities, dismissing as impossible a feat that was merely extraordinarily rare and sacred. For those who hold this view, the absence of a clear archaeological find spot is tragic but not definitive. Many of the greatest treasures of antiquity have been looted, their contexts lost forever. The rotary tool marks on the museum skulls, they argue, condemn those specific objects, but they do not write a final verdict for every crystal skull in existence. The possibility, however slim, remains that somewhere one of these haunting objects is a true messenger from a world that understood both stone and spirit in ways we are still struggling to comprehend. The history of archaeology is not just a record of discovery, but also a chronicle of deception. The very same era that gave us the crystal skulls, the late 19th and early 20th centuries, was a golden age for archaeological forgeries. This was a time of immense public excitement about the ancient past, yet scientific methods for verification were still in their infancy. Ambitious individuals saw an opportunity not to uncover history but to invent it. Perhaps the most famous example is the Piltdown Man. In 1912, fragments of a skull and jawbone were presented as the fossilized missing link between apes and humans, found in a gravel pit in England. For decades, it was celebrated as a cornerstone of human evolution, a source of immense national pride. It was not until the 1950s that advanced testing revealed the shocking truth. The skull was a medieval human cranium, the jaw was from an orangutan, and both had been meticulously stained and filed to look ancient and to fit a preconceived idea of what our ancestor should look like. The motive was likely a toxic mix of personal fame and a desire to place Britain at the center of the human story. The Piltdown forgery succeeded because it told people exactly what they wanted to believe. The crystal skulls operated on a similar principle, though with different motives. Here, the driving force was less about national glory and more about commerce and romantic mystery. The skulls fed a booming market for exotic antiquities, catering to wealthy collectors and museums eager to possess a tangible piece of a mystical, lost world. A skilled forger in Idar Oberstein or a clever dealer in Mexico City wasn't trying to rewrite human origins, they were fulfilling a fantasy. They were selling a story of ancient priests, lost knowledge, and cosmic connections, a story far more marketable than a simple, if beautiful, piece of modern crystal carving. These objects challenged institutions by exploiting their hunger for the spectacular. A museum curator, faced with a breathtakingly perfect crystal skull and a persuasive tale of its discovery, had to make a choice. The scientific tools to definitively prove it a fake were not yet at their disposal, and the pressure to acquire a show-stopping centerpiece for the public was immense. Many chose to accept the story, allowing these magnificent fakes to become embedded in our cultural understanding of the past. This phenomenon reveals a crucial truth: forgeries are not merely lies, they are mirrors. The Piltdown Man reflected a desire for a very specific, Eurocentric narrative of evolution. The crystal skulls reflected a growing Western fascination with the spiritual wisdom of so-called primitive cultures, a longing for a past that felt more magical and connected than the industrial present. These objects succeeded because they spoke to deep, unmet yearnings in the society that received them. They were accepted not in spite of being too good to be true, but because they were too good not to be true. In this light, the skulls are more than just clever fakes. They are cultural artifacts in their own right, telling us more about the hopes and biases of the 19th and 20th centuries than they ever could about the ancient Maya or Aztec. The question of how a crystal skull could be made is no longer just theoretical. Today, a handful of master artisans around the world have taken on the ultimate challenge, attempting to recreate these legendary objects. Following their process reveals the staggering difficulty involved, and in doing so, illuminates both sides of the centuries-old debate. The journey begins not with a chisel, but with a hunt. The carver must first source a single, flawless block of clear quartz crystal large enough to carve a life-sized human skull. This alone is a monumental task and expense. Such a block, weighing perhaps 50 or 60 pounds, must be utterly free of internal cracks, clouds, or impurities. Finding it requires connections to specialized miners and a willingness to spend thousands of dollars before a single cut is made. Once the perfect crystal is secured, the real work begins. If the carver chooses the purely traditional, pre-industrial path, they are committing to a feat of almost superhuman patience. Their toolkit is brutally simple: a bow drill, various chisels made of hardened metal or even stone, and an array of abrasive sands. The process is one of relentless, granular attrition. The carver uses the bow drill, its tip dipped in a wet slurry of abrasive grit, to slowly grind away the crystal. Each pass removes a whisper of dust. To hollow out the eye sockets or the base of the skull, they might drill a series of closely spaced holes and then painstakingly connect them. There is no room for a single forceful mistake. Quartz does not bend, it shatters. The carver must maintain a constant, intuitive dialogue with the crystal's internal grain, feeling for vibrations that warn of an impending fracture. Under this method, creating a skull of museum quality is not a project of months. Experienced carvers estimate it would take one person, working full-time, between 1 and 2 full years to complete. The final polish, achieved by hand rubbing with ever finer pastes, could take additional months. This timeline alone makes the ancient artifact theory viscerally compelling. It feels like the work of a lifetime, a sacred commission that fits our romantic vision of a devoted, spiritual artisan. Now, witness the same project with the aid of modern technology. The contemporary master carver has a very different arsenal. They use diamond-impregnated saws and grinding wheels powered by high-speed electric motors. Water jets keep the crystal cool and suppress the dangerous dust. A flexible shaft tool with a tiny diamond burr allows for intricate detail work inside the eye sockets and around the teeth. With these tools, the brute force shaping of the skull is dramatically faster, perhaps reduced to a matter of weeks, but faster does not mean easy. The cost of specialized diamond tools is extremely high, and they wear out quickly against the relentless hardness of quartz. the artist still needs a profound understanding of the material, as a powered tool can shatter the crystal in an instant if misapplied. The final polishing, even today, often reverts to time-honored hand methods to achieve that flawless optical clarity. So what does this modern experiment prove? It demonstrates conclusively that a 19th-century European workshop, equipped with the early rotary tools of the Industrial Revolution and staffed by generations of master lapidaries, possessed both the technical means and the artistic skill to create these objects. They had the diamond powder, the foot-powered lathes, and the knowledge. They could produce a crystal skull in a fraction of the time an ancient carver could, and the microscopic evidence on the museum skulls tells us that is exactly what they did. Yet, watching a carver today, whether using a bow drill or a diamond wheel, we also understand the awe these objects inspire. The combination of immense material value, countless hours of focused labor, and breathtaking beauty makes any crystal skull, ancient or modern, a genuine treasure. The difference is not in the wonder they evoke, but in the story they truly tell. One is a testament to 19th century European ingenuity and the booming market for the exotic. The other, if it existed, would be a monument to a pre-Columbian world we are still striving to understand. The final verdict on these objects may lie in the past, but the tools to understand them are now firmly in the future. A quiet revolution in artifact analysis is underway, powered not by brushes and trowels, but by lasers and algorithms. Researchers have turned to high-resolution, three-dimensional laser scanning to dissect the crystal skulls without ever touching them. This process bathes the artifact in a grid of harmless laser light, with sensors capturing millions of precise data points that map every contour, every microscopic scratch, and every subtle imperfection on its surface. The result is not a photograph, but a perfect, manipulable digital twin. This three-dimensional model can be rotated, zoomed into, and analyzed in ways the fragile physical object never could. A researcher in London can examine the exact angle of a cut on the British Museum skull, while a colleague in Washington can pull up the same view on the Smithsonian skull, comparing them side by side on a computer screen as if they were in the same room. This allows for a forensic comparison that was once impossible. Experts can now study the exact profiles of tool marks with incredible precision, looking for signature patterns. Does the curvature of a grinding groove on one skull match the unique wear pattern of a specific type of 19th century lapidary wheel? Does the asymmetry in the eye sockets of two different skulls suggest they were carved by the same hand, someone with a distinctive stylistic quirk? These digital models become a permanent, open archive. They preserve the object in its current state forever, guarding against loss or damage, and allowing future generations of scientists with even more advanced technology to conduct new analyses. This digital detective work is slowly building a new kind of provenance, one based on the immutable geometry of the carving itself. It may one day allow us to group skulls into families, tracing them not to a mythical Aztec temple, but to a specific workshop in Idar Oberstein, or even to the bench of a particular, immensely talented and hitherto anonymous carver. The laser scan does not see mystery, it sees mathematics, and in those perfect digital curves, we may finally find the true signature of the artists who created these enduring enigmas. But what happens when institutions declare the mystery solved? For some, the scientific verdicts from London and Washington did not close the case, they merely proved the conspiracy was real. A shadow narrative persists, one that argues the true origins of the crystal skulls are being actively suppressed. Why would museums, governments, or some unseen authority hide the truth? According to these theories, the answer is world-altering. Perhaps the skulls are indeed ancient repositories of advanced knowledge, and their rediscovery threatens established power structures or religious doctrines. Maybe they are tools of such potent psychic or energetic power that their secrets are deemed too dangerous for public understanding. or, as some suggest, their extraterrestrial origins are being concealed to prevent a catastrophic shift in humanity's self-perception. In this view, the meticulous scientific reports are not evidence but cover stories, a deliberate campaign by elite gatekeepers to dismiss what they cannot control. This impulse to distrust official explanations is not unique to the crystal skulls. It is a powerful force in how we process unexplained phenomena. It stems from a deep-seated human desire for a history that is more magical, more connected, and more meaningful than the one presented in dry academic papers. When a museum says an object is a 19th century fake, it reduces a thing of wonder to a mere commodity. For those who have felt a profound personal connection to a skull, that explanation feels insultingly inadequate, a dismissal of their lived experience. The conspiracy theory, by contrast, validates that feeling. It says your awe is correct, the object is as powerful as you sensed, and the authorities are lying because they are afraid of it. This framework transforms the skull from a debated artifact into a symbol of resistance against a cold, materialistic establishment. It also feeds on our innate tendency to find patterns even where none may exist. The coincidence of multiple skulls appearing in the same era becomes evidence of a coordinated plot. The gaps in provenance are not seen as historical losses, but as intentional obfuscations. The refusal of some scientists to entertain psychic claims is not methodological rigor, but a willful blindness. Every piece of contradictory evidence can be folded into the conspiracy itself, making the theory unfalsifiable and, for believers, irrefutably true. These narratives, while often lacking empirical support, are a significant part of the skull's modern legacy. They represent a cultural conversation happening in parallel to the scientific one, a dialogue between institutional authority and populist intuition. They remind us that an object's meaning is never fixed solely by experts. It is also forged in the hearts and minds of those who encounter it. The crystal skulls, therefore, exist in a dual reality, as subjects of laboratory analysis and as vessels for our deepest hopes for a hidden, more enchanted world. Perhaps the most profound truth about these objects has nothing to do with their age. A crystal skull is at its core a breathtaking work of art, and its power lies in the universal symbols it embodies. Stripped of the debates about forgeries and prophecies, it remains a deeply resonant object because it speaks to two of humanity's most fundamental fascinations, our own consciousness and our inevitable mortality. The human head has always been a primary subject of art across every culture, for it is the seat of thought, identity, and the soul. To render it in a material as luminous and translucent as crystal is to create a stunning paradox, merging the solid, biological fact of our skull with the ethereal, seemingly immortal quality of light passing through stone. It represents the mind made permanent, consciousness crystallized. This is why the image captivates us regardless of its historical backstory. It visualizes the hope that our essence, our awareness, might transcend the physical decay of the body. Yet simultaneously, it is a stark memento mori, a reminder of death. The skull is the one part of the human skeleton that remains instantly recognizable, the universal symbol of our finite nature. By making it beautiful, clear, and precious, the artist does not hide from this truth, but transforms it into something to be contemplated rather than feared. This dual symbolism of death and illuminated consciousness gives the crystal skull its enduring emotional weight. It is an object that makes you think about thinking and about the vessel that holds it all together. To understand this, we need to place it within a much broader tapestry. The carving of skulls is a tradition as old as art itself. In the very lands where the crystal skulls are said to originate, we find powerful precedents. The Aztecs created the tezonpantli, towering racks displaying the skulls of sacrificial victims. These were not hidden, but architectural statements of power, faith, and the cycle of life and death. They carved stone skulls as decorations for temples and as ritual objects, acknowledging death as an ever-present force within the community. across the Atlantic, in medieval and Renaissance Europe, artists were obsessed with the memento mori motif. Paintings, sculptures, and jewelry featured skulls as sobering reminders that worldly pleasures were fleeting and that one must always be prepared for the final judgment. A nobleman might have a small skull carved from ivory or jet on his desk, not as a morbid trophy, but as a spiritual tool for reflection. From the intricate skull masks of Tibetan Buddhism to the celebratory sugar skulls of Mexico's Dia de los Muertos, cultures worldwide have rendered the skull in art to process the mystery of death, to honor ancestors, or to assert the triumph of the spirit. The crystal skull fits perfectly within this ancient, global conversation. It is a technologically sophisticated entry in the long human history of staring into the face of our own mortality and trying to find meaning or even beauty within it. Its material simply adds a new layer of poetry, suggesting that what lies behind our eyes might be as clear, as structured, and as enduring as the Earth's own crystals. Seen this way, the question of whether it is 500 years old or 150 becomes almost secondary. Its true age is measured not in centuries, but in the timelessness of the human questions it asks us to consider. The enigma of the crystal skulls has built more than just legends, it has built a marketplace. Walk through the vibrant stalls of any major tourist market in Mexico City or the Yucatan, and you will find them. Rows of gleaming crystal skulls, from palm-sized trinkets to larger, more imposing pieces, sit alongside embroidered shirts and painted pottery. They are sold as souvenirs, of course, but also as spiritual talismans, said to bring clarity, protection, or a connection to ancient wisdom. For a few dollars, anyone can own a piece of the mystery. This is the most visible layer of a global industry that has grown directly from the skull's fame. Online marketplaces are flooded with them, carved from every type of quartz imaginable: amethyst, rose, smoky, and clear, often accompanied by descriptions echoing the prophecies and energy claims popularized by New Age literature. The original artifacts, whether deemed fake or authentic by science, have become powerful brands, their iconic shape instantly recognizable and endlessly reproducible. This commercial life is a testament to their grip on our imagination. We are not just buying a carved crystal, we are buying a symbol, a story, and a tangible piece of a narrative we find compelling. The economic impact extends far beyond souvenir shops. Major institutions now leverage the skull's notoriety to draw visitors. The British Museum's crystal skull, prominently displayed with its updated label explaining its 19th century origins, remains one of the most sought-out objects in its vast collection. People come to see the famous fake, to stand before the object that inspired so much controversy. In Belize, tour operators highlight the connection to the Mitchell Hedges story and the site of Lubuntan, where Anna claimed her miraculous discovery. The local economy benefits from the enduring power of that romantic tale, regardless of its historical veracity. Conferences, books, documentaries, and even specialized tours dedicated to crystal skulls and metaphysical topics form another niche economy, catering to those who engage with the objects on a spiritual or conspiratorial level. This entire ecosystem blurs the line between artifact and commodity in a fascinating way. The original skulls, now mostly residing in museums as examples of either exquisite craftsmanship or elaborate forgery, have been stripped of their archaeological mystery by science. Yet, in the public sphere, they have been reborn as cultural icons, their value transmuted from historical truth to narrative power. They generate revenue, inspire travel, and fuel small businesses, not because they are genuine pre-Columbian relics, but because the legend itself has become a valuable resource. The crystal skull, in all its forms, is no longer merely an object of study. It is a product, and its most enduring property may be its remarkable salability. This polished crystal surface was never meant to hold a face, yet its proportions whisper a human story. What if we listened? We took a precise three-dimensional scan of a famous skull, like the one in the British Museum, and presented it to a forensic artist who normally rebuilds the faces of the ancient dead. Their task was not to identify a specific individual, but to perform a reverse engineering of artistic intent. Using the skull's exact dimensions, the depth of the eye sockets, the width of the nasal aperture, and the pronounced zygomatic arches, they began to layer on muscle, fat, and skin, following standard anatomical guidelines. The process is methodical, almost clinical, yet the result is startlingly intimate. A face emerges from the geometry of the crystal. It is broad, with strong cheekbones and a wide nasal structure. The artist notes that the cranial shape and facial proportions do not align closely with typical European or African ancestry models used in forensic databases. Instead, they bear a stronger, though not definitive, resemblance to morphological patterns associated with indigenous populations of the Americas. This is not proof of an Aztec model, but it is a compelling echo. More telling than the ethnicity, however, is the artistic style. The crystal skull is not a perfect anatomical replica, it is an interpretation. The eye sockets are deeply hollowed, almost exaggerated. The teeth are stylized, and the overall symmetry is idealistic. The forensic reconstruction based on these proportions yields a face that feels simultaneously realistic and sculptural, a blend of human truth and artistic idealization. This suggests the carver was likely working from a combination of memory, artistic tradition, and perhaps a few observed anatomical specimens, rather than having a live model or a detailed medical text in front of them. They were creating a symbol of a head, not a portrait of a person. This exercise adds a poignant human dimension to the cold debate. It transforms the skull from an abstract artifact into an object that passed through human hands guided by a specific vision. Whether that carver was a 19th century German lapidary imagining a romanticized Aztec or a genuine pre-Columbian artist working within their cultural canon, they made conscious choices. They decided how deep to carve the eyes, how wide to make the jaw, what skull-ness meant to them. The reconstructed face, gazing out from the digital ether, makes those choices visible. It reminds us that behind every object, genuine or forged, there is a creator with an idea in their mind and a tool in their hand, trying to translate a vision into enduring stone. The mystery is no longer just about when it was made, but about who that artist saw when they looked at the crystal block and began to set a face free. That reconstructed face, born from digital scans and forensic science, now stares back at curators with a silent question: what label do you place beneath it? This is the final frontier for the crystal skulls, a quiet battle not in labs or jungles, but in the very words typed onto a museum display card. On one side stands the unambiguous weight of scientific consensus. Microscopic analysis, geological sourcing, and tool mark forensics all point to 19th century European workshops. The ethical duty of a museum is to present the most accurate information available, to educate rather than mystify. For many curators, the only honest label is a clear one: 19th century crystal carving, likely German, style inspired by pre-Columbian art. It tells the truth of the object's creation, placing it in its correct historical context as a stunning product of the industrial age's fascination with antiquity. It transforms the skull from a misunderstood relic into a genuine artifact of a different kind, a window into the collecting habits and romantic imaginations of the Victorian era. This approach respects the visitor's intelligence and fulfills the institution's core mission. Yet, standing before the glowing case in a hushed gallery, another perspective emerges. For the public, the label is often secondary to the presence of the thing itself. Many visitors arrive not as students of art history, but as pilgrims of a modern myth. They have seen the Indiana Jones film, they have read the New Age prophecies, they feel the palpable aura of the object. To declare it a forgery in bold text can feel, to some, like a dismissal of their entire reason for being there. It risks turning a moment of wonder into a lesson in disappointment. Some museum professionals argue for a more nuanced approach, a label that presents both narratives. It might state the scientific facts of its modern creation upfront, but then add, despite its recent origins, this object has become a powerful cultural icon, inspiring legends of ancient prophecy and serving as a focus for spiritual practices in the modern era. This dual labeling acknowledges that an object's significance is not fixed at the moment of its making. It accrues meaning through the stories we tell about it. A curator at the British Museum might explain that their goal is not to kill the mystery but to deepen it. The real mystery is no longer who carved it, but why this particular forgery became so globally famous. Why did this shape, this material, capture our collective imagination so completely? That is a cultural mystery worthy of its own exhibit. Interviews with visitors often reveal this split in perception. One person might say, "I'm glad they told the truth. It's still beautiful, and now I know it's a testament to human skill, not aliens." Another might shrug and say, "I don't care what the card says. I felt something when I looked at it. That's my truth." This divide gets to the heart of what museums are for in the 21st century. Are they solely repositories of verified facts, or are they also spaces for personal experience and cultural reflection? The crystal skulls sitting at this crossroads force institutions to grapple with that question. The narrative we choose for the label is a powerful act. A purely scientific label asserts authority and corrects the record. A layered label that includes the legend validates the public's emotional engagement and treats the object's entire biography as history. Perhaps the most responsible path is to do both, to present the forensic facts with clarity, while also displaying nearby a book open to a page from a 1930s adventure pulps or a clip from the famous film. This juxtaposition itself tells the truest story, that of an object whose journey from a German workshop to a global symbol is a fascinating cultural artifact in its own right. The skull's final enigma, then, may not be about its past but about our present and how we decide to hold both truth and wonder in the same glass case. The crystal skulls sit before us now, stripped of their ancient disguise by science. The evidence from their molecular structure, the microscopic rotary tool marks, and their paper-thin provenances points overwhelmingly to a single conclusion. The famous museum specimens are masterpieces of 19th century European lapidary art, born in workshops like those in Idar Oberstein, designed to feed a hungry market for the exotic. They are beautiful, skillful, and utterly fascinating lies. Yet one stubborn question lingers like a phantom in the quartz. The Mitchell Hedges skull, with its hinged jaw and disputed history, refuses to be so easily categorized. Its technical perfection remains a genuine puzzle, a testament to either a lost ancient patience or a modern forger of unimaginable dedication. It is the last flickering candle in the chamber of pure mystery. But perhaps we have been asking the wrong question all along. The true enigma of the crystal skulls is not really about their physical origin. The deeper, more revealing puzzle is why we, as a culture, fought so hard against the scientific verdict. Why did we, and do we, so desperately want them to be ancient? Their enduring power speaks to a profound human longing. In a world meticulously mapped by satellites and explained by data, we crave spaces on the map marked "Here be dragons." We yearn for a past that holds more than pottery shards and carbon dates, a past imbued with lost wisdom, advanced civilizations, and cosmic connections. The crystal skulls became perfect vessels for that yearning. They are physical, tangible objects onto which we could project our hopes for a more magical history. They represent a desire for a world where knowledge was not stored on servers, but in crystal, where salvation was not a political process, but a prophecy waiting to be fulfilled. Our fierce attachment to their legend is a mirror. It shows us a modern hunger for wonder, a deep-seated need to believe that our ancestors or someone's ancestors possessed secrets we have forgotten. It reveals our discomfort with a purely materialist history and our search for meaning that transcends textbooks. The skulls, whether carved in 1880 or 1500, ultimately tell a true story, just not the one we first imagined. They tell the story of us, of our endless fascination with the unknown, and our timeless desire to find or to fabricate a key to a more enchanted world. So the journey ends not with a lost city, but with a simple, undeniable truth written in the stone itself. We began with Hollywood prophecies and psychic legends, stories of salvation encoded in crystal. We followed these objects from jungle ruins to museum halls, chasing a phantom of the ancient world, and we arrived finally at the cold, clear evidence of the scanning electron microscope, revealing the parallel grooves of a 19th century rotary tool. The mystery, as we first understood it, is solved. The great enigma of their origin has been answered, but to say that solves everything is to miss the point entirely. Unmasking these objects as modern creations does not diminish their power, it simply redirects it. They are not relics of a forgotten civilization, but they are genuine artifacts of a fascinating historical moment. They are products of the 19th century's booming curiosity trade, masterpieces of European craftsmanship born from a romantic obsession with the exotic other. They are physical remnants of colonialism's complex legacy, objects that speak to the extraction and repackaging of cultural heritage for a distant audience. Their story is no longer about ancient priests, but about Victorian collectors, ingenious German carvers, and the universal human desire to own a piece of a more magical past. Knowing their true origin does not make them less captivating, it makes them more human. They reflect not the dreams of the Maya, but our own. So here is the final, reflective question for you. Are these crystal skulls any less captivating now that we know they are likely not ancient prophecies, but rather mirrors held up to our own fantasies about history? What do you see when you look into that polished quartz surface now? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive from myth to microscope, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more journeys into the shadows of history.